Raghunath, are you ready for this?
What?
The Wisdom of the Sages trainings that are going on.
Where?
At the Eco Village, the Govardhan Eco Village in India.
Why?
To totally transform your life spiritually.
Who?
You, me, Raghunath Swami's going to be there. Other great teachers are going to be there. Lots of cool people.
How?
You go to wisdomofthesages.com/events. You find all the information there.
Haribo.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Super Soul Farm. This is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center, New York, Kaustubh Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Q&A day. It's Saturday. It's sleep-in Saturday. You know what, Kaustubh? I slept in. I feel good. I feel a little bit refreshed. I've been overworking myself and just trying to get a little better before I head out to India on pilgrimage. We got a big group we're going on pilgrimage with, and I am incredibly excited about bathing in Mother Ganga.
Okay.
Yep. I'm playing the Ganga Stotram every day. Mara, can you put the Ganga Stotram on the board so people can play it today on their downtime? Yeah. And you were at the initiation yesterday. I missed all the, but you know what? I'm glad I just stayed back. I just wasn't feeling well.
Okay.
How was the initiation?
It was a beautiful event, Raghunath. It was a beautiful event.
If you're listening live on Facebook, welcome. We do this every day. Every day we do the study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. On Saturdays we do Q&A. On Sundays we do generally we do an interview. And but Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern time, we do this live on Zoom. You can join us live on Zoom. Email Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And or you can get this podcast wherever you get podcasts. You can get it on YouTube. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. So welcome, Facebook people. And today we're going to dive into questions, but do we have any announcements first?
We have a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 9:30 today. And tomorrow at 11 a.m. through the Bhakti Center is the Urban Devi program.
Ooh, okay.
And for Patreon members, we sent out a special gift of appreciation yesterday for the Patreon members residing in New York City and Atlanta. They've got 2 free tickets to Johnny Harrison's show. If they're
What?
It's a blow-up bonanza.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Johnny Harrison. Johnny Harrison really likes to support what we're doing here. And if you like to support what we're doing here, this is a community-supported podcast. Please go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. And that's how you can support us. You make some monthly contribution. And we try to keep this boat floating. We think it's important to hear the Bhagavatam every day. And it's become like an all-pervading, encompassing part of our life. And I'm happy. I'm happy that it is. I'm happy when I go to bed at night, I think, oh, God, I got to do this tomorrow for the podcast. I got to prepare for the podcast, all this stuff. I'm glad those are the worries of my mind.
Do you prepare for the podcast?
Do I prepare for the podcast? Is that a trick question?
I mean,
you trying to set me up?
It's very straightforward.
Mara, look what he's trying to do. Look what he's trying to do. Yes, I do prepare for the podcast, my friend.
How so?
Did she just laugh at me? Did she just laugh? I prepare differently than you do, Prabhu.
Okay.
It's different. I prepare humor.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
Let me tell you this.
Yeah.
It is our on Tuesday. We're closing the Kirtan Academy. Registration will be closed. So if you're interested in doing Kirtan Academy with us in January, me and Seth Lieberman, go to wisdomofthesages.com, sign up. It's going to be a great little program. And it goes from the 4th to the 15th in India at the Govardhan Eco Village. And then if you want to stay on longer, guess what? Wisdom of the Sages is doing our sage, what do we call it? Light on Wisdom, which is great. It's a great training on every day. Immerse yourself in Bhakti culture with a beautiful backdrop of Radhanath Swami's Govardhan Eco Village. And Radhanath Swami's always there, floating on by, checking in with us, giving us some classes and some kirtans. So it's an amazing way to spend your January. Go to wisdomofthesages.com and you could check that out, sign it up. But if you're thinking about kirtan, there's people always sitting on the fence. If you're sitting on the fence, Tuesday's the last day to do it for the Kirtan Academy. We're going to close the registration for that.
Okay.
All right.
We should also mention we have Divya tomorrow. Divya Alter, master Ayurveda chef and expert.
She's going to be on the show tomorrow. I tell you, Divya, the bright light of the sun of Divya has arisen, and she's like taken over the world. I feel like
big.
With her Ayurvedic cooking and her cookbooks, and everybody's like, yeah, this is Divya's recipe. Everybody's referring to her, loving her, giving shout outs, going to their restaurant in New York City underneath the Bhakti Center, which is quite incredible, I will say.
Just one more thing, Mayor, I just want to be clear. People can still write in to receive tickets to Genevieve's concerts.
Yeah, they can still write in to receive tickets via Patreon. They can send a message, or they can email us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and they can sign up to be a Patreon member.
It's a blowout bonanza, for real.
Yeah.
It's a blowout bonanza, for sure. For sure. I wish I was going to be there. I'm going to be in India, but I'm going to miss it by like a day.
Oh.
Okay. All right, Kostuba.
We got Q&A today, Raghunath. Shall I read the first questions for both of us? Shall I read it?
Yeah, you can read it.
The two of us.
You have a beautiful reading voice.
Oh, thank you. This is from a sage group, one of the sage groups, which we spoke about on our Thursday throwdown. This is coming from Cindy Lunsford's sage group. Ready?
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhus, for bringing all of us together on this path and creating a support and association of the sage groups. They give us such a wonderful opportunity to discuss our successes, failures, doubts, inspirations, and also to revisit many of the personally relevant topics that you introduce on the daily podcast. Good. I mean, wonderful. And that's what they're meant to do, right? A few weeks ago, we discussed how to explain Bhakti in a way that makes sense and may even be compelling for somebody new. That was one of the weekly topics for the sage groups. Now they're going to give it a bit of a nuance now, Raghunath.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, the question came up in our group with respect to people who we are deeply and intimately on the material path with, like a spouse or parent, or even an older child.
Sure.
Sometimes there's fear and concern that this path will distance us or even take us away from them. Can you please give us some guidance? Here's the question, Raghu. You ready?
Yeah.
On how to share or present our bhakti in a way that will assure them that it is not going to break us up, so to speak, without necessarily making them feel like they need to join us on our spiritual path. How can you do that?
Gotcha. You want me to take a shot at this first?
Don't worry. Raghunath is here, and he's got some expert advice on this.
Well, I have been through this period. When you first find about Krishna consciousness and Vedic thought, you're like, this is it. I figured the mysteries of the universe have dropped on my lap. Wait till the rest of the world hears about this. And you just feel like when everybody hears this, at least this is how I thought. When everybody finds out this knowledge, it's gonna join hands. The Christians are gonna join hands with Islam, and the Jews are gonna join hands with the Christians, and then we're all gonna come together, and we're gonna all hold each other in a big circle and march together into the temple in Brooklyn and worship Radha Govinda. And it just didn't happen that way. The more I would explain Krishna consciousness to people, the more I thought they would get into it, and they'd be like, "You're crazy. You're crazy." Now, part of it happened. Part of it's because I wasn't so good at explaining it.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it was the way that
part of it I wasn't so good at explaining it. I myself was practically a high school dropout from the hardcore scene, erratic in my behavior. No one wanted to listen to me, any of my like educated brothers and sisters, family members, and friends. So we have to also become like sophisticated in how we understand it, and when we get into bhakti, have deep realizations about it. You know, what's interesting is we throw around this word, especially in the old days of Bhakti, we call it Krishna consciousness 1.0. Everyone was a preacher, a preacher, a preacher. And I get it. We want to spread a good thing. But sometimes when we don't understand the philosophy or in a very deep way, we explain the superficial things and not the essence of a thing. And it oftentimes drives people away. The best way I found, especially to family members, and this might be different for other people, the best way I've found to become serious about being Krishna conscious without trying to, quote, convert them, but caring for their spiritual life is to just be Krishna conscious yourself and all the other things that materialists appreciate, having a nice family, having being like having a respectable job. You can do all those things. You can be a respectable, what appears to be a respectable materialist, so to speak, but deep down they know you have some connection, you have some depth, you have some integrity with the way you live. And if you have brothers and sisters who are sort of like also erratic or crazy in their behavior, they might look up, oh, you're so solid in how you live. Some other people, there's other people who aren't Krishna conscious and they're very solid in the way they live. They're, they're zipped up materially. But they might appreciate some depth in your life. But the fact is, you're going inside now for your pleasure. And so there is not necessarily a way that you might not push people away, not even because you want to. It's just like Krishna consciousness isn't something we do an hour and 15 minutes once a week. It starts to become part of us. So it might become a little awkward when mom sets up the altar in the kitchen. You know what I mean? It might be a little awkward when mom's putting food on a plate and ringing a bell and offering the food. But if you explain things in a sort of a non-triggering way, it could work out smooth. Everybody's different. And I don't think there is one answer to this. Someone like Mara, who got into Krishna consciousness later means not from Hare Krishna 1.0, from Hare Krishna 2.0. Like, I didn't preach to her, hey, give up your job, you're in total Maya. I mean, Mara had a full-blown meat catering business where she was successful serving meat to everybody. You know what I mean? That was her she added.
Why don't you say that one more time?
Meat. She cooked and killed animals in that butcher shop of a kitchen she's in right now. Just kidding, Mara. Sorry. But the fact is, she added Bhakti to her life and slowly started to transform her life. And when it slowly transformed her life, she didn't really change anything from the outside. But her father and her sister, both regularly listen to the show every day for some reason, support us. And so the change can happen in a very positive way where, I don't know, Mara, why don't you unmute for a second? Did you ever feel like your siblings were threatened by you getting into Bhakti?
No, I also never preached to anybody. I mean, it's
how
just
did they
not my
come
nature.
around?
Better start preaching.
Yeah,
Mara.
you know what I mean? Like, I would just kind of like drop a little nugget from the show every now and again when it worked in the situation, but I didn't like ever go out of my way to bring my agenda to the table in any way. And I think that like people just became, or at least my family members just became curious what this was that I was so committed to.
Well, now, how did Papa Tony end up being like a regular listener to the show? Was he interested in it on his own, or was he trying to check out what you were into?
Well, I thought that he was just checking up on me to see if I was part of a cult,
Yeah.
but then he really stuck around.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, he chants every morning. He chants japa every morning and does as part of his morning sadhana. So, I think
he's no slouch. He's like an 80-year-old, Yale graduate, impressive, started his own newspaper. He's an impressive guy.
Yeah,
so I think whatever Mara did.
So maybe there's a principle there, like you're not trying to force it on anyone, even convince anyone. But hey, if you want to check it out, I got all kind of research. Dig into it and see what I'm into.
Yeah. I tend to push people away. I'm a little bit extreme.
Okay.
And people can't. But Krishna can't. Yeah. What about you, Kostuba? Did you push people away? Did you try to convert your dad?
No, I mean, no, I didn't try to do that for sure. I just kind of disappeared from the world. Which I had already actually done previous to finding Krishna Bhakti, but
Disappeared for a few years. Oh my God.
no, but this question here. So I'm looking at it's what's mentioned here is like well, what did it say exactly again? Like people are worried that you're gonna like leave them behind or something like that, break us up, right? Which I think, yeah, I think that's one of the main fears is like, are they going to start to not be interested in me anymore, and they're just going to be interested in this thing, which is kind of like what I did, right? It's just boom, I'm gone.
Yeah, we were from that different generation. We were just
Yeah.
like later.
Yeah.
And if I did integrate with my family, I'm like, Mom, I'm bringing 15 Hare Krishnas over the house. We're gonna live here for a month and practice songs and cook. Don't worry, we'll do all the cooking and cleaning. You just have to let us live in your house. We did that for like a month.
Okay. And I
So-
think another concern that people might have is, are you going to become like this new moral judge about how I live my life?
Okay.
I think that can also play a role in that, or that might have something to do with the breaking up, right?
Yeah.
So I think the idea here is that the whole thing is so foreign to many people. It's from another continent, from another age. I think when a lot has changed in the world since we started getting into this, Raghunath, like the world's become there's like this globalization kind of trend has changed a lot of things.
Thank you, globalization.
Well, like for instance,
I
don't
get it.
think there was one Indian kid in my school, right? Now it's like most
had
people have
two.
Indian kids that they're growing up with in their
I
school.
had 2 Indian kids,
Okay.
but they were sort of like considered outcasts. It was just like, you know what I mean? It was,
Yeah.
that's how it was.
And yoga wasn't such a big thing, and vegetarianism wasn't such a big thing.
Yoga
it's
was
like,
nothing. Yoga was
yoga
nothing.
didn't exist. Yeah, it was something. Yeah. So so I think it's not as vastly foreign as it was when we were growing up. But it still is foreign. Mantra chanting, the things like that. A lot of it still is foreign. So it's got to be explained in a way that seems very rational, right? Let me ask you, is it a rational decision to get into Krishna Bhakti?
Is it irrational or rational?
I'm asking you, is it rational?
It's the most rational.
Okay, so then it just has to be explained in a rational way, right?
Okay, so we're in charge of making that bridge. We're in charge of taking them wherever they are and figuring out how to build a bridge to Haribol. Like that's how I see it. Wherever you're at, my job is to get you to Haribol.
Yeah. So it's got to be. It has to ease their fears. However, we're going to explain. It has to speak to their fears. And maybe you just want to ask, what are you afraid of? Is there something that you're afraid? Not in a, and I don't mean that like in a challenge. Like, what are you afraid of? Not like that, but like, share with me. Like, does this concern you? I'm ready to hear your concerns, and speak to those concerns. And also, it has to be presented in a way that's rational, that makes sense to people. So it could be something like, well, granted, this is something new to me, and I've been reading books, and I've been meeting with people, I've been hearing from people who've inspired me to seek out, a deeper meaning of what life is about. And I think that's what we're meant to do in life. That's not so bad, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I want to be careful that I'm just not letting all the time in life just slip away without learning the lessons that I'm meant to learn in life. What the world, what nature is teaching. I want to focus on understanding. I don't think that life is just meant to be, zip by. Is that okay? That I believe? Okay. Good. And then, so through my studies and through my contemplation and so on, here's some things that I've come to believe. I believe that we're not the body. I believe that I'm eternal, that I'm just a spark of energy that's animating this body, and that deep within us, it's our nature to be happy, and it's our nature to love and serve others. Is that okay? Well, okay, that's reasonable. It's like, and that a lifestyle of kindness and simplicity will help me uncover that nature that's within, and that's where you can start to get. And so some things in my life may be different, because I want to live according to, you see, if you're saying, because I follow the blue God or something like that, that's why I did doing this and doing that and doing that, that's going to sound irrational.
The Dark Lord.
The dark. But if I say, I believe that kindness and simplicity are important values for people. They're important values spiritually, that they help us understand who we are and what life is about. And that's why I'm making some changes in my life. That's why my diet's changed, because I feel that I want to try. I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm not judging you, but this is what I want to do with my life. I believe that it'll be an act of compassion to change my diet. And I believe it'll help me understand life better. I'm not saying that you have to do it, but it's what I want to do.
This is a good approach. This is a good approach.
Right.
When I was a teenager, I was just like leave Prabhupada's books around the house for my mom to read. Just like throw them around, like leave a Back to Godhead on the kitchen table. It didn't work. I like the way you just take it on. This is what I'm into. I think it's sort of cool.
I think it's important to keep it on like, this is my own personal spiritual path and experimentation that I'm doing. That's why I'm making these rational decisions. But I'm not saying that you are morally inferior for not making the same decisions. That's where people when they start to feel judged, they start to put up the walls, So I'm not judging you, but this is what I'm doing. This is why I've chosen to do it. And I'm happy to talk with you about it, and so maybe maybe I'm losing interest in some things that we shared before. It's not that I don't like you
like
anymore.
Everything. I get it.
I love you as a person. I love your sense of humor. I love your intelligence. But I don't want to go. But everything that we ever did together,
everything that we ever cherished, those are over.
Okay, but it has to be.
Truthfully, it's actually sort of sad. But it happens. You start to change your tastes.
Yeah. Now, here's another important point, Raghunath. Okay, where we're kind of like, where we want to try to make sure we're keeping it on the rational level and not speaking in a way that sounds irrational to them.
Okay.
You say, I believe that there's a God, that there's a divine intelligence behind the world, and that God can be known like in different ways. Like God is everywhere. God is within the heart. And I also believe that God can be known as a person. And I understand that sometimes this personal feature can be very off-putting to people. I get it. I get it. The way religion has been presented historically and so on. If you have if it's disconcerting for you somehow that I'm speaking about a personal God and so on, I get that. I'm not, I don't judge you for that, having that kind of opinion or anything like that. But if you want to understand that part, that's the esoteric part of my faith. And if you want to understand that, that's going to take some, that's going to require some deeper conversations and so on. But try to understand it. But you can kind of put that in another category. That painting that I have on my wall
above our bed.
Yeah, that on every wall in my in my apartment, everywhere you look.
That little figurine on our dash
on our car dashboard.
How I changed the vanity plate from Mercedes to
Coven to 108.
Oh my God. I'm sorry I'm laughing because this is a very big deal. And I'm really, really impressed by these people who are very sincere devotees, and they're married to non-devotees, people that eat meat, and they're just doing it. And it's very impressive, and it's hard. I'm sure it's hard because it's almost like you got to put a bubble around yourself in some ways and not let bad influence in. Yet try not to like agitate them right out of the house. And so it is a very difficult thing. You know what? Let's face it. Nothing's easy in this world. And if you're in a good relationship with a person and you have kids, you just have to be genuine and sincere, and it's going to come out of you. And if you can't,
well, that's the point, right? It's got to come out. And what is it like? Hey, if you're concerned about where I'm going with this, what I want to share with you is that my goal here on this spiritual path is to become kinder, is to become more compassionate, is to become wiser, is to become more generous, and so on, and thoughtful and appreciative. And so, hopefully, as I'm moving forward on this, you're going to see that, and you won't be threatened by it or, concerned about it, but you'll, hopefully you'll see, oh, it may not be something that's for you, but I'm hoping that you're going to be able to say, oh, well, at least it's good for me,
Chief Pags wrote in and says, I say my perspective just shifted. And I think it'd be really interesting. Wonder how Lori did it. Lori just did her thing. Lori Pags, she's on the show
Well, he
every
knew
day.
she was
Never
into
ever
yoga.
missed a show. She's a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
She wrote in, she said, I never pressured Chief Pags. I just lived it. And he came to it on his own accord.
There you go.
Yeah. By the way, it also sometimes drives people out of the house. It's just, you just want to be true about it. It's just, it also is like, this is not going to work anymore. I've seen that happen too.
That may happen.
Everything that we valued, you don't value anymore. I'm over this.
When there's a major clash in values,
sometimes, yes.
then that can happen. So, and I think that's an important way to frame everything too. Is like, here are my values. Do you accept these values? Do you accept that kindness is a good thing, that compassion is a good thing? Well, this is how I'm choosing to express kindness and compassion. Diet is a big one. That for a lot of people, that's going to be one of the major hurdles.
Especially because that's one of the joys of material life.
Yeah.
Is let's eat together. Let's go out to eat. Hey, let's go. And
or intoxication too. Quite frankly,
or intoxication. Let's go out and party. Let's go to a club.
Yeah. And here's the value that I'm not saying I'm not approaching it by saying the act is evil and because you're doing it you're evil. I'm saying here's a principle that I'm trying to follow, a value that I have that I think makes me helps me become a better person. And that's why I want to practice it. You may choose to do different. That's your choice. That's fine. I'm not judging you for it, but that's why I'm making this change. I think keep it out of the morality judgment, carefully remove it from that and place it in the into the values and almost like the experiment that I'm doing on myself. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but there's the path that I'm walking.
Experiment I'm doing on myself in my laboratory.
Come in with your smock. Okay, I hope that's helpful. There's some stuff in there. I'm sure there's something helpful in all of that. You ready, Raghunath, for question number 2?
Oh, Krishna. Oh, man. Sometimes I laugh and I lose consciousness. It I don't know what it is. Like my blood stops
sometimes
circulating.
about twice a show.
Not every show, but there are sometimes. That was one of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
question?
I think the best answer with that is good luck out there. Try your best.
Okay.
I don't know if there's an easy answer because some people they get into bhakti, but they're not that deep in their understanding, and there's no way they could possibly do it without blowing somebody out.
The great point, I think, is also if it gets into the debate mode and you're dealing with a skillful debater, and usually they're going to go to those esoteric parts that you're going to have a hard time defending. You believe in the blue God and he lifted the mountain. And oh, come on, man!
The God had thousands of girlfriends. What kind of God do you worship? Some philanderer God?
Yeah, and so you may find yourself, tripped up. You may find yourself, I'm having a hard time defending my faith right now. And I think you can be real honest about this, and say, you know what, you're presenting arguments that I'm having a hard time defending against. But I'm somewhat new to this and I have a difficult time articulating it. I'm still working out more clearly how to articulate it to people, but here are the sources that I've been deriving from that make a lot of sense to me. So there's no shame in saying I don't have a good answer for your question right now. I need for me to be able to articulate this will take some time to better articulate it, but from what I'm hearing, it's inspiring me. And you can leave it at that if someone's kind of attacking, right?
And you never. Here's another weird twist to it: is you never know who your family members are. Also, sort of Swedish, and sort of Swedish's sister got into bhakti, and then her dad got into bhakti, and her dad's totally into bhakti too.
It's like Mara over there.
Like Mara, and Mara's like Mara gets into it, her father gets into it, her sister listens to the show. And so it's one of those things you just never know. Like my family was completely, no way, not interested, not cool. But you never know what happens 10 years later also.
True.
When you're just sort of steady. Like my mom totally hated it, then just totally just sort of accepted it. And then she comes to kirtans like at super soul and just sort of like, tries to dance sitting on a chair.
Right.
She's old. I think people also change if you're sort of like fixed in what you're doing and you're growing in a healthy way. They think, oh, my daughter's happy, my son's happy.
Yeah.
My mom knew Paramananda,
Okay.
because we grew up together.
Did
And
she
so-
want you hanging out with Paramananda?
Well,
or did she not
she
want
liked
you?
Paramananda as a kid, but then when as we got older and I got into it, I said, yeah, Paramananda's, he's into Krishna consciousness too now. And he goes, I think that's good for him. Almost like, all right, it's not a great path, but it's something. It's better than just screwing around in New York City in a
It's
rock
a
and roll
hardcore
band,
Yeah.
So yeah,
All right.
good luck out there. I'm going to end it with good luck out there, people.
Good luck, people.
It makes for a great story 20 years down the line.
Yep. Okay, you
right,
ready for
what's-
question number 2?
Yeah, what's we got?
It's come from our friend Vayudas.
By
From
talented
Australia.
artist from
Talented
Oz.
artist. I got his painting hanging up. Look, it's looking at me right now. A cow looking at me right now.
Mara's got the frog, the Three Sages frog
Yeah.
painting he did for her, hanging up.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Can you pinpoint the reasons why both of you got into Krishna consciousness, got into bhakti?
Yep.
And what is it today? What is it today that drives you forward in your spiritual life? You have a lot of eager passengers on this train, and I'm one of them. Thank you. Invited us.
Pinpoint. what got you
Pinpoint
into
the
bhakti.
reasons why you got into this, right? Pinpoint it.
I give this is like a novel, but I can also just give.
When's the
really-
book coming out, Ragnar?
Here's my book. My book is it's getting held up because I have to keep on re-editing it, and
Oh man.
it's going slow. But it's gonna happen.
Okay.
But anyway, I think the two major things for me, by the way, and you never know what the backstory of Raghunath is, like the backstory of Kostuba, the backstory of Mara. Like, what were we in our previous life? Were we spiritual people? Were we very, very focused, evolved spiritual people? Or we were just, material in the muck of materialism? So we don't know our backstory. All I can say is for presently, what appeared on the surface of my life was I got famous at a young age, not Michael Jackson or Billy Joel, but famous enough where people knew me. I could play shows all over the country, and people would come and they'd sing my lyrics of my band. I was really into clean living and health conscious and vegetarianism in the 80s when it wasn't so popular. We had a whole movement of people that were supporting that, and I was like a spearhead of that. Paramananda also was my partner in crime there. And that type of fame and validation that I knew lots of people really wanted, it so wasn't fulfilling. In fact, it was more exhausting and gave me more anxiety and more internal sadness. When I thought like the whole world wants this and I have it. Do I just have to get even more famous? Well, then I always wanted this concept of wisdom to sort of like fall over me. I want sort of knowledge. I want to be wise. And I thought like, well, maybe I'll just get more and more famous and run down this sort of alley and see where it takes me. And the farther I got along on the alley, the more empty I felt. I didn't feel more wise. I feel like I tricked a bunch of people into worshiping me like I'm the wise one or I'm the one to go to for answers, but I felt like I'm lost myself. So that type of dissatisfaction with material life and material pursuits, that was a real thing for me. And it was very loudly real when I was a young man. Then that mixed with like my father, who was like sort of like a rock in my life. He was the stability. We had a big family, and he worked very hard, and he had a lot of parameters and guardrails in his life. Then all of a sudden, like he just got sick and fell ill and died sort of untimely. And I was like, wow, the temporality of what I thought was so solid, the frailty of what I thought was solid. This can happen in a moment to anybody. It can happen to when I saw him die. I was like, this is me dying. Like I can die like that. So when you mix when you like study temporality, like examine it and reflect upon your own life, mixed with the futility of material pursuits, I felt like I need a compass. I need a compass. And that mixed with the mercy of the devotees, of the people practicing bhakti, like giving me mercy, showing me mercy. I was inquisitive. Devotees reached out and they explained things to me in a very, very broad-minded way. I will say, people like Prabhu, they were such open-minded teachers that they made me feel incredibly like, yeah, this isn't a sectarian thing. This is a very broad way to understand how to approach divinity. So I think that little recipe saved my life and helped me deal with the pain and the loss and the, what I thought was going to fulfill me. How about you, sir?
How about me? I don't know why, but when I was young, I hit a certain point where I just started searching for something a little deeper. It was kind of evolving, especially through music, right? Especially through the music I was listening to was sending me messages to look deeper into life. From music, it went into politics. And as I was growing up, as I was coming of age, like as a teenager, I entered deep into that whole punk rock scene. And when I got into it, it put me in a world where I could see like different kind of political activists. When I was a little kid, I was kind of blown away by all of those figures from the 60s,
Right.
the Malcolm X's and the people like Abby Hoffman, and just like
that was a big thing when
people
we were
that
teenagers, especially in that corner of Manhattan with the yippies and the hippies.
You had the
and
yippies right across the
protests.
street from CBGB's, right?
Yeah, the yippie headquarters. That was Abby Hoffman, right?
I don't know if Abby Hoffman
Yeah,
specifically, but he was certainly related to the whole thing. Certainly Jerry Rubin, who was like kind of his partner. I think maybe he would be considered.
So you were looking for something to believe in that seemed like this is a righteous purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And I became kind of disillusioned by a lot of that too, because somehow I was seeing that these people are kind of as hateful as anybody else,
Or
Right,
they were like, or they were like really messed up. Like, we have people like that were really into that, but died drug overdosing.
Yeah, they're kind of
they
like a
weren't into
little
clean living.
mentally unstable in different ways.
Yeah.
That was certainly there. So it started to shift more towards spiritual at that point, and I began to, especially I was reading the Bible.
Really? You read the Bible?
Well, I wasn't really like, not thoroughly, not like a real deep
Well,
study,
I wasn't
but
really
I would,
reading
I wasn't really reading it. I was hearing some TikToks about the Bible. No, but I was getting into reggae music at that time. That was leading me a little towards the Bible.
Okay, that's your Bible. You were listening to reggae. Okay, I got you now. Go ahead.
But not only that, I was dipping into different kind of, reading different spiritual things and contemplating from a spiritual perspective. And of course, I had a group of friends that were into it. I had a group of friends. Well, no, I'm sorry. I had a group of friends that were into Bhakti, and so that's where my search kind of coincided with the messages of Bhakti that were coming from the group of kids that I hung out with. And so that led me towards reading Prabhupada's books. My whole initiation into the Eastern world was directly into Prabhupada's books. That was my gateway in. And it was really it was really hearing Srila Prabhupada's explanations of everything, from books like Bhagavad Gita and Ishopanishad. You read Ishopanishad's great messages there, right? Just the way that it opens up, the first few, verses there, are just like, wow.
Why don't you quote that verse, Kostuma? Why don't you quote that
the
verse?
Om Purnamadaam Purnamidam. I mean, it's just, there's so much there, and also books like The Science of Self-Realization, which is a really important book back then, right?
Well, because it's sort of like, it's a very easy read because it's conversational.
I think nowadays a lot of people like their entries something more like The Journey Home or something like that.
That's an easy read too, peppered
Yeah.
with deep philosophy, but it's more like an adventure tale, a
But
real
there
life
was no
adventure
book
tale.
like that back then, at
Yeah.
least not for Krishna Bhakti. So
No.
so a book like The Science of Self-Realization, which is, it's like kind of like a smorgasbord of different, some talks, some letters, some interviews, it's like all these different formats of hearing from Srila Prabhupada. But a book like that was really important. And vegetarianism, the idea of vegetarianism became important.
Right.
So I was kind of like, there was an event in my life that kind of steered me more towards the spiritual too, which I talked
You
about.
had an event?
Well, I was.
What kind of event?
When I was a kid, I got in a fight, and let's say I got hospitalized.
Right? Oh, this is your I got stabbed story?
Yeah. It's not my I got stabbed story. It happened,
I know. I'm just saying this. You got stabbed. It's you got stabbed story.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you made it up.
No, okay. But I'm saying it was at that point in my life that I saw my own rage and everything like that, I really looked, I had to look at my own rage that I had, and I had to look, it was kind of a crossroads.
You're like the least person, like you seem like the farthest away from rage than anybody I've ever met.
What are you talking about? That's not true.
I never seen you get angry.
You see me get angry.
Prabhu.
But in any case, I was
me get angry.
Then. I was a kid then,
I'm like throwing tables over. All right, go on.
Well, like my friends at that time, they were so
say it.
Violent, angry, violent,
You hung out with a very angry, violent crew there, I will say.
Yeah. And I really had to come to terms like how seriously I was going to seek revenge,
Oh, about this guy that stabbed you?
Yeah, because he did it in a really low, I kind of like let him up, and then he chose to take out a switchblade.
After you got off him and say, okay, fight's over, then he pulled out a knife.
Yeah, after he was begging me to stop, I stopped, and then he took out a switchblade, and then it was a whole West Side Story thing going on there,
Man, a lot of people who don't know Kastuba are like, what the heck kind of podcast
I think I talked about
this?
it on.
Who are these two?
I know I talked about it in
thought
depth.
you were a priest.
I talked about it in depth back before it was Wisdom of the Sages, back when it was a Super Soul Sacred Sangha. I remember.
Yes, we have a dark past, people.
Yeah, we do.
You should hear Maris.
But my point is this: like, almost all of my friends at that point would have first of all, they would have never got off the guy. They would have just pounded him. That's the world that we lived in. That's the way my friends would have. What to speak of after what he did? It would have been like seek some serious revenge.
Right. And so what happened to you?
So what I'm saying is that it did have to make me contemplate, where's my life going to go? Am I going to get harder and harder and harder? Like harder hearted, is that the path that I want to go down? It kind of brought it right to the surface, and I had to think about, or do I want to become more deeply spiritual?
Wow.
Right? It kind of put me in a place where I had to think, and that kind of accelerated my spiritual pursuits.
Isn't it interesting? Thank you, Krishna, for getting stabbed.
Stabbing me.
Yeah. It's these things that happen in life. Kastuba, this is an important factor here too, because we like to think, well, because I'm spiritual, or because I got stabbed, or for me, because I was into clean living, but really, it's the mercy of devotees, like going out of their way. So that crew that you hung out with, as violent as they were, they had some taste for Bhakti, and they sort of introduced you in a very sort of like welcoming way to Bhakti. They got some mercy from very sincere monks or, serious practitioners, and they gave you that mercy, that information. And we are sort of just like made up of mercy. No matter what we are going through in life, we got to apply wisdom to our pain, our loss, me feeling like I was in a dead end. You feeling like, what should I go to revenge or should I grab onto God? And it's really boils down to, by the mercy of the devotees, we came to what we have, before I get all proud and think I must be really spiritualized into clean living and vegetarianism in the 80s when no one else was, no, it's the mercy of the devotees, because there's a lot of people who became vegetarians and gave it up. There are a lot of people who became vegetarians who were just arrogant and cruel. You know what's an interesting thing is you and I went through this period of like pain and material world. Where the hell did Mara go? Mara didn't come from that scene. I'm sorry to drag you back on the microphone, Mara. Do you mind if I just ask you, and you don't have to get into a whole bio, but was there some things, because Mara didn't come, she got into Bhakti in a different way, but not through pain of material existence. I don't think you were suffering with material existence, but I'd be curious to know, were there one or two things that said, yes, this path?
You mean like events in my life or things that I came across within the Bhakti path?
Well, whatever it was,
Either-
Stu, whatever the question
Either
was.
one. Well,
Yeah.
I think it's open to both. It says, what is it? Pinpoint the reasons. So that the reason may have been an event, or it may have been something you heard or something that rang true with you.
Yeah, I think part of it, I was with my mom when she left her body. And I just felt like there's clearly a soul in this body. Like I guess I hadn't thought that deeply, and I just sort of felt like, I don't really know. Nobody really knows whether, like I've heard these different,
So when you heard the Bhakti teachings, it resonated with that feeling in you that was kind of unarticulated.
Yeah, with a truth that I had felt that was sort of
Yeah.
unarticulated.
Right. I think it's like that. It was like that for me too. It was beginning to
Yeah.
articulate what I felt, but
Right.
couldn't articulate, and then go further and further and further and further and further consistently.
I
Mhm.
know it never ends. It's further and further. Yeah, that makes sense too.
And
Many
and that,
planets, yes. Hellish
that-
planets, yeah.
Why
Mystical
not?
powers, sure. UFOs, maybe.
But I was gonna say
Why not?
the second part of the question is, what is it today that drives you forward in your spiritual life? And to me, that's part of the answer, that there's always more there. But I would say this, and I'll tell you something, Raghunath. Yesterday on the show, we read about we were reading these inspiration things from Satchidananda Swami.
Yeah.
And I found one already. I'm living it. I'm using it. I'm living it. It's changing
What?
things in my life.
You're living it already? It hasn't been 24 hours yet.
I know, but I'm living it.
You're living it. Tell me.
is the one that said, find that little spark, right? Find that spark of what did it say? But like that spark of love, I think it said, right? Find that spark of love that's within you.
Yeah.
And then act based on love, not based on duty.
Ooh, act
Right.
on love, not on duty.
Yeah, find that. There's a little spark. In other words, when that spark someday, and I hope it won't be too long, that little spark is going to be fully aflame, and everything that I'll do, will be out of a spontaneous, deep love. That's where I want to go. And right now in my life, that's not where I'm at. There's a little spark in there, and a lot of my spiritual practices are being done dutifully because I know that it's good for me, because it'll help me, right? But the fact is that little meditation, that little adjustment, because like right now I have to sit and chant my rounds. Right now I'm going to sit and chant Gayatri. Right now I'm going to do this or do that. Right now I'm going to do some puja. And the habit is to say, right now in this next minute, I'm not going to be able to advance, way more than I am right now. I can't just flip a switch
Right.
and become more deeply, but there is a spark there. That's for sure. Let me go and find that little spark right
Fan that
now.
flame. Fan that flame.
Yeah, and use that little, and let it come from that spark. Let my chanting, let my puja, let my Gayatri, whatever it is, let it come from that little spark, right? Let it come from right there.
That eagerness. Fan
Yeah.
that flame. Spark it up.
Yeah, and so what drives me today is the more that you can feel that, the more exciting it is, And if you can feel like, oh, I'm a little bit better able to like let go of things that I couldn't have before, and it's freeing up space in my mind for that spark, to grow and so on. That's exciting. And
how is that manifested?
how what do you mean?
Like how
The-
is that demonstrated? How did you demonstrate that in 24 hours?
Well, what I'm saying is, like, when I sat down to chant, I'm not able to flip it, but I can reach. I can remind myself, find that spark right now. Right?
What's the
there is
thing
a
that's-
spark. It
Sure.
may I might not have a big flame that's like right out front, but I know there's a spark there. Let me go there in my
You know what
mind,
I'm
in my
gonna
heart.
do? I'm gonna call you Bhakti Sparky.
Okay.
Bhakti Sparky. It's gonna remind me of your inspiration.
You can do that, Raghunath, if you want.
Sparky, that was good.
What you do, I can't control what you do. All I can do is control how I respond.
Okay,
And I'm going
Bhakti
to respond by calling you.
Sparky. And I'm gonna respond. Oh, Prabhu, that was fun. It was a fun show today.
I think we only got 2 questions today, but
But they were good questions. They were great
great
questions. I think they have to be
questions, yeah.
spoken about. And I'm glad. Thanks for Mara. I didn't mean to drag you into this whole show today, but I think it's important to hear Mara because she's normal. She's pretty normal.
she's more normal than us.
In every wonderful way, you're normal.
My wife was just saying about you just today
About who? Me or Mara?
about Mara.
Okay.
She's saying Mara's just such a steady devotee, you know.
She's steady.
She's
And, you know,
steady,
that's
and she's not doing it for any reason other than because it's because of her devotion, you know. So that's the test, you know. Not like she's getting something, you know.
No, we give her nothing.
We don't give her anything. She don't get paid. Hardly gets any
We
accolades.
made her pay for that T-shirt. Cost.
Oh, that was good.
Oh,
Mara's the
Krishna.
best. She does so much that most
So much
people
for
don't
so
know
little.
about. For so
Mara, so much for so little.
little. There you go. Is that the way you think of her?
Thanks for making me laugh today, you guys. Thanks for everybody on Facebook for watching us today. This is a spiritual podcast. Transform your life by hearing a little bit every day. Not my information. All this stuff is coming from the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's what we direct our life. That is our GPS in our car. We don't use TomTom or Google Maps. We use Srimad Bhagavatam to direct our inspiration, our search for
Tom, what did you
joy.
say?
TomTom, it was a whole. Remember, there was a period in history. You're slowing me down, but there was a
Right.
period in history where people are like, "Oh my God, we can get rid of our atlases and our road maps and our Thomas guides and just get this thing we put on our dashboard called a TomTom."
I'd never even heard
You
of
didn't
it.
have a car, so you don't know these things. You're a New
Okay.
Yorker. You didn't need this. But the
Right.
rest of us were like, "This is fascinating." Rerouting. You know, you put it on your dashboard, and it was like the most fascinating thing in the world. We no longer have to use a map, and very quickly that window closed, and everybody got an iPhone. It's like I'm just gonna use my phone, and it drove TomTom until like, you know, it was like
They
a
thought
laser.
they had the
It was like
biggest
a
thing, and
laser
then it was
disc.
gone.
It was here and it was gone. Laser disc are the next big thing. We're gonna make a Youth of Today laser disc. No, it was over. It just ended. It's an archaic. Yeah,
Things are moving too fast, Raghunath.
things are moving quick now. No more time for TomToms.